Yes. Hey, hey. What's up? Welcome to Big Decisions Live every Wednesday at noon Pacific. You can join me for lunch where I will talk about big decisions. All right. Making sure that we are live everywhere. It looks like we are. Okay, cool. As always, I want to start by reminding you that every single day, including today, is an opportunity for you to make a decision that changes the course of your life. And that's an incredible thing. Again, it'd be hard to take an action today that changed the course of your life. You can't go to the gym and work out so hard that your life is forever altered because of how hard you worked out. One day in the gym will not change your life. Not in a good way. You might be able to go into the gym and like break something in one day, but to make some positive, massive impact on your life in one day, there's almost no action that you can take in one day that's gonna change your life. But a decision, whew, decisions absolutely can change your entire life. Just sitting here. Just one, without anybody knowing. Hopefully I switched over to my mic, my fancy mic, so hopefully you all can hear me on this. But you could be sitting there, minding your own business, and make a decision that changes your life forever. You ever have that feeling where you know you're in a moment of decision where you're like, yo, that's it. This job, I'm done. Or, yo, I am going back to get my MBA. Or, yo, I am going to travel for a year. Before any big action comes a big decision. Last week, we talked about deciding with heart. And that's the most important way to make a big decision, is when your heart is 100% the source of that decision. It's when your heart is completely behind the decision that you are making. And if it's not, then make a different decision. Because being able to be motivated by the big decisions that you make is the power of a big decision. So we are indeed going to talk about now, if you've made a big decision, cool, but how do you actually make it a reality? If you've worked with me, you know that I push you to say, no, let's not listen to that feasibility monster that sits on your shoulder and says, oh, can't do that. That's impossible. There's no way that's going to work. Or that worthiness monster that says, you know what? It's probably possible, but not for you. It's not possible for you. Or that social monster that sits on your shoulder and says, what are people going to think if you actually go after this? what are people gonna think if you go after this thing and you fail? What are people gonna think? What are people gonna say? What if you what are people gonna think if you go after this and you succeed? You now are in a different place as a human. So we get so caught up worrying about whether or not something's possible, worrying about whether or not we deserve it, or worrying about what other people are going to say. When really, the only thing we need to be worried about is what is in our heart. So let's say that you have made this big decision that is in your heart. You made this decision with heart. Well, now what? Now what do you do? All right. So now what you do is share your screen. All right. So you've made your big decision. You decided with heart. Step 2 of the complete decision protocol, there's only 3 steps. And step 2 is identify the requirements. Okay. So identify the requirements. This is step 2. And it's super important and it's easier than you think. Okay. So there are a couple of things. Let's say you have this dream. Your big decision is to launch your own business. Okay. So identifying the requirements means asking yourself the questions. Here's question number 1. What must happen? Okay. So what must happen? And you could just fill in the blank of to make my big decision a reality. What must happen to make my big decision a reality? Another way to answer this question is to ask the question or finish the sentence. My big decision will be impossible without. Your big decision will be impossible without. Without what? Okay. So question number 1. Question number 2. Question number 3. What conditions must I create? So these are all questions to get you thinking about, okay, how do I make my big decision a reality? What must happen? My big decision will be impossible without these things. Without what things? What condition must I create in order to make my big decision a reality? Now, this is not the way that most people think. Most people do not think in terms of requirements. Most people don't think in terms of doing what is required. They think in terms of, what can I do? Let me write down some of the things that people say that are not great. We'll put them in yellow. What can I do? Another one. What should I do? And another one. What could I do? Whew. These are all terrible questions. Terrible. You know why? Because who cares what you can do if it's not required? If it's not required to actually make your big decision a reality, then who cares if you can do it? Similarly, who cares if you can't do it? If you can't do it, who cares? You better figure out a way. If it's a requirement, you got to figure out a way to make it happen. So that's why can really is an irrelevant question. Who cares what you can do? If what you can do is not required for what you want, who cares? If what you can do, if there's something that's required that you can't do, you need to figure out a way. So this is why we don't want to be thinking about can when we're thinking about building a plan. We don't think about can. We think about what's required. Okay, should. What should I do? Should is almost always based on the social monster. It's based on us imagining what other people would do or what other people think we should do. We want to be looking at what absolutely has to happen. What must happen in order to make your big decision a reality. Too many people spend too much of their lives on should. I'm going to say that again. Too many people spend too much of their lives on should. I should because I should have a nice car because the other VP has a nice car. I should go get back to school and get my master's degree because my parents think I should do that. I should have fancy clothes because people are going to judge me if I don't. Should is one of the most costly words in your life. People spend time, money, and energy on should, when the real question is, do you need it? Do you want it? If you can't say yes to either of those, don't do it. If you can't say yes to either the question, do I need to do this? Or do I want to do this? If you can't answer yes to either of those questions, don't do it. And could. Oh, could. You thought I forgot about you, didn't you? I didn't forget about you, could. So could is a little bit like can, but with conditions. Could means you actually can't even do it right now, but you could if something was different. Who cares? Who cares if you're just like, if you can almost do a thing? We need to be thinking about what must happen. What would make my big decision impossible if I don't do this thing? What condition must I create? These are the questions that you want to be asking. These are the questions that you need to ask. When I wanted to get into the FBI, I wanted to join the FBI from the time that I was 13 years old. And it's because I watched a ton of X-Files. The week that I dropped out of high school, I got a hold of an FBI recruiter. And they told me about all the things that I needed to do in order to get into the FBI. They told me what must happen. And if I had thought, well, I actually can't do any of those things because I just dropped out of high school, I wouldn't have been able to make it into the FBI. So if I had been thinking about my dreams for the FBI would have died because I dropped out of high school. And the first thing the recruiter was telling me was like, hey, finish high school strong, get great grades, go to an amazing college. Doesn't matter what you study, but get amazing grades. Right. So like right off the bat, I found myself in a position where I was already behind when I was 17. So instead of focusing on what I can do, what I should do, what I could do, I focused on what must happen. What must I do in order to get this role in the FBI? And the cool thing is that once you identify these requirements, you can just keep asking that question. So, in order to get into the FBI, you have to have a top secret clearance. Okay, so that's a requirement. And what are the requirements for that? What must I do in order to get a top secret clearance? And you can ask that all the way down until you just have a list of tasks that you know are not going to have you wasting your most precious resource of time. They're not going to have you wasting your energy, are not going to have you wasting money. Identifying the requirements and continuing to ask that question all the way down is how you make big dreams a reality. All right. It's short and sweet this week. That's it. So if you're out there and you have made a big decision and you're like, okay, I've got this big decision. Now what? Now you know the questions that you need to ask. Not that you should ask, that you need to ask if you want to be able to build a solid plan to making your decision a reality. Thanks for being here, everybody. We'll see you next week on Big Decisions Live.